Welcome to the Week 2 Go-To session. This is the second session that we're having of 4 this month. Thanks to those who are in attendance. Thanks to those who are watching. Um, okay, so this week we are going to pick up from where we left off last week. Can everybody else hear me? It seems like Tyler's having issues now. Tyler, can you hear me? If not, I'm going to type a quick message. Yeah. Tyler, yes. Try leaving and entering the room again. That usually does the trick. But I'm just going to keep moving forward. Okay, so last week we sort of talked about the class in general, but then we got into the week 1 assignment, right? Which was this brainstorming worksheet based on the ad that you have chosen. I'm still grading the worksheets. Truth is, I've barely even scratched them. I'm teaching an extra class this month. Usually I teach 2 classes. This month I'm teaching 3. So yeah, it takes a while to get through even the earlier stuff. Like today I graded the weekly journals and the McGraw-Hill modules. Most people did awesome. So keep it up. Because it really should be quick grading. Like I should be able to race through them and just give people hundreds. And for those people, maybe, the biggest issue I see is like they either summarize the reading but not the lecture or vice versa. So those can be easily corrected because they really should be easy points. Okay. So I'm going to do something different this week. I'm going to do things a bit backwards. Instead of beginning with the presentation, I'm going to jump right into this week's main activity. Okay, you can see my screen. So here's the list of our class, right, and what we have to do. Ooh, I didn't notice this little error. I hope it doesn't appear this way on your end. This is supposed to be tucked inside here. I'll fix that later. Anyway, okay, so we're in week 2. The main activity for this week is an organizing activity. Oh, okay, thanks, Catherine. I've always wondered about that, like if how it looks on my end is how it looks on your end. Okay, so you can read the instructions for this activity on your own, but really your job is to create an outline. Yeah, there's a lot to read, and I do encourage you to read it. Because, for example, you have a video here to watch, pathos, ethos, and logos in advertising. And this can actually be one of your 3 sources. We're going to talk about research today as well. You need 3 sources. And this could be one of them. So then you just have to find 2 more. As always, you have examples. So if you click here, you get a past student's outline. And I also have created an example. So using the Jeep ad that we looked at last week, I've created an outline. I've also written an essay. I sent it out because some people were curious to see a finished example of what we're working toward. That will also appear next week, because next week you're going to write a draft of the actual essay, but we're not there yet. Remember, we're working toward a single essay in this class, just one essay, but we're doing it step by step. So step 1 was to choose an ad and brainstorm, basically come up with ideas, and hopefully you came up with a solid thesis. Because you need a solid thesis before you can move on to this next assignment. That's why I'm under some pressure to really grade quickly tomorrow. Because, yeah, I need to grade everybody's worksheets, and you need feedback specifically on the worksheet as a whole, sure, but especially that thesis. Remember, prompt 9 asked for you to take 2 attempts at writing a thesis statement. I need to make sure that each one of you has a working thesis before you move on to this next step. By the way, we're supposed to aim for a 72-hour turnaround time from the time that an assignment is due, which means that I should have things graded by tomorrow at midnight. If I need to go past that, I always give a day back. So just don't panic, okay? Stay alerted. If I have to extend the due date from Sunday to Monday, I'm usually fine with that, okay? So I would never take an extra day to grade, but then rob you of a day. But yeah, just a heads up, because it's going to take time for me to get through all those worksheets. Okay, so the main activity for this week is an outline, but here's the good news. You might be thinking, okay, I kind of know what an outline is, or you might be thinking, I have no idea what an outline is. The good news is you don't have to come up with an outline on your own. We've given you the basic format. You just need to fill it out. Now, what I want to do that's a little bit different is I have a blank Microsoft Word document, And I apologize in advance if this sounds like super dumbed down, because maybe you've learned this in high school, but I just want to, because some people can learn from this, okay? So last week we talked about a thesis. And remember, I kept stressing the number 3? This is because, yes, in this class I'm teaching kind of like a telegraph thesis, a thesis that boldly states what your 3 discussion points are. So for the ad, you have to come up with 3 things. For my Jeep essay, remember, I identified, I think, color, imagery, and its tagline. So, but let's imagine that we're writing a very simple paper on what your hobbies are. So a thesis could, at its simplest, be something like, my hobby, oops, I hate this keyboard. These new Macs have the thinnest keyboard. My hobbies are running, swimming, and hiking. Okay, lamest thesis ever and lamest paper ever. Write a paper about your hobbies. But notice, okay, because what I want you to keep in mind is this idea of 3s. Okay, running, swimming, hiking. So what we're aiming for in this class is a 5-paragraph essay. And the 5 paragraphs you're going to write, and each Roman numeral I'm typing here represents a separate paragraph. So the first paragraph is an introduction paragraph, and it ends with your thesis. Okay. The second paragraph is where you discuss your first thesis point. So this would be a paragraph about running. Your next paragraph would be about your second thesis point, swimming, and so on. Third paragraph would be about your love for hiking. And then you need a conclusion. Okay, very basic stuff. And again, I apologize for those of you who say, I already learned this in high school. I know what a 3-point thesis is. I know what a 5-paragraph structure is. But I want, not everybody's familiar with this stuff. And I want people to understand the basic overall structure we're aiming for, because this will help make the outline template, which is more detailed than this, much more detailed. It will make sense. Okay, but this is what we're aiming for, a 5-paragraph essay, not on what your favorite hobbies are, but obviously the ad analysis paper that we're working toward. But keep this in mind, we're aiming for 5 paragraphs, and you have to have a thesis that lists 3 discussion points, okay? Because that's going to set up the structure for the entire paper. Now, in the real world, do we often see telegraphed 3-point thesis statements? No. Usually, it might end with a strong main idea that helps tell the reader what the paper is going to be about, or the article. Does all writing have a rigid 5-paragraph structure? No, absolutely not. But the basics apply to all writing. All writing has some sort of opening or introduction, some sort of closing or conclusion, and then in between separate body paragraphs that focus on one topic at a time. So that's what I care about most, is that people leave this class being able to tackle any writing assignment, because they know they need some sort of beginning, some sort of ending, and in between they discuss their points one at a time. Catherine says, must we use a strong main idea after our thesis statement? No. And actually, sometimes I think in real world writing, you rarely see such a direct thesis statement. What you would see is more of a main idea. So you'd have a sentence that says something like, I don't know. It wouldn't list maybe the 3 things specifically. It would be a strong statement, though, about how you have hobbies, how you're passionate about hobbies, and it kind of signals to the reader that that's what the paper is going to be about, right? But anyway, I'm teaching these sort of, yes, very straightforward topics, because again, I want people to learn the basics. And then after this class, sure, you can pull back. I should also point out that even though it seems limiting or restricting, it isn't. Again, I've written a sample essay using the same concepts. So my Jeep essay has a straightforward thesis. It has a 5-paragraph structure. The format is not limiting, because you can always fill it in with your own content that hopefully is interesting. In other words, it's only as limiting as you make it. But yes, this is what we're aiming for, because we want to teach people, and plus it's easier for you on some level. It's easier for us to grade if everybody's sort of generating a basic 5-paragraph essay. But yeah, after this class, you might write a 10-paragraph essay, but the same thing. You'll have an introduction of some sort, a conclusion of some sort, and then paragraphs in between where you focus on things one idea at a time. Okay, so here's the blank outline template. Okay, as you can see, it's much more detailed. But here's the thing I want to stress. When you see these Roman numerals, 1, 2, they have the same function, okay, in that simplified outline I just created from scratch. Same thing. I say this because week one featured a brainstorming worksheet. So sometimes students look at the next assignment, see that it's another document that needs to be filled out, but they don't really understand the function of it. So they see these as individual prompts that need to be answered. Just like the week one worksheet kind of looks like, oh, 10 questions I have to answer. That's easy. Sometimes people open this document and say, oh, more prompts to answer. And it's like, no. An outline, of course, is a blueprint. You're setting up your essay. And the more care you put into the outline, the more ready you'll be for the essay draft stage. Because if you have a really solid outline, you can pretty much move on to the essay draft stage without much difficulty. Because, again, outline is about getting the main ideas on the page. And then you just have to fill in the rest. Someone asks, is there a specific topic for the thesis, or we make our own? Well, and I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I would encourage you to make sure that you've watched the first lecture, because the first lecture was entirely about what we're working on this month, an ad analysis essay, and we covered thesis statements. So yeah, you do have to create your own thesis, and there is a specific topic. It's going to be the 3 specific things you're going to say about your ad. So my first piece of advice is if you haven't watched the first lecture, watch it. If you did watch it again. Or reach out to me with questions. If for some reason, like, all the stuff in week one was super confusing, yeah, reach out to me, because it's important that everybody at this stage already knows what a thesis is, right? That everybody has a good grasp on what we covered in week one. I understand that some people might be confused about certain things. That's perfectly fine. But yeah. Okay, so yes, this is not another worksheet. Okay. Every Roman numeral represents a separate paragraph in the essay. So Roman numeral 1 is your introduction paragraph. And it asks for 3 things. First, a 1-sentence hook, enticing your audience to read more. In layman's terms, just give me a 1-sentence preview of how you think your essay might begin. Okay, that's what it's asking for here. Because I have a completed example here. Okay, so here's a completed outline. And this is using the Jeep ad. So my hook is here. Jeep, the well-known brand, practically markets itself with its reputation for ruggedness, independence, and adventure. And that is indeed actually how I ended up beginning the essay. So yeah, just a 1-sentence preview of how you think your essay might begin. You might change it, you're not married to it, but give me an idea of how you think the opening sentence might read for your essay. You'll probably almost certainly go beyond a single sentence. Okay, but just give me 1 sentence. Oh, and please come up with your own sentence, because every month I see people write, Call of Duty, the well-known video game, practically sells itself with its reputation for. Yeah, come up with your own thing. There are lots of ways to begin a paper. So don't just, study the examples. That's why we provide them, but study them. Don't borrow, okay? Let's see. Second, a concise description of the ad. Just 2 or 3 sentences, okay? And you're not getting to analysis, because the introduction is a general paragraph. Again, real-world writing, you don't dive right into the middle of things, right? So this is the introduction paragraph. We're just setting things up. So give me a 1-sentence idea of how your paper might begin, then just a quick description of the ad. This is not what you did in the worksheet. Remember, it asked for a detailed description, as if you were describing the ad to someone who's never seen it before. That is not this. Okay, this is just a short description. So here's mine. Okay, actually, I think mine is 4 sentences. So if it's 4, yeah, just don't go wild. Now, why am I asking for this? Because your audience for this essay is the general reader. It's like the perfect stranger. It's like some plain Jane or Joe Schmo that you could pull off the street. They may not have seen the ad, or maybe they've seen the ad but don't remember it well. So you're just giving them an overview. And this is pretty typical, by the way, in lots of different openings for writings, that you find some way to kick things off. You give some sort of idea what you're talking about, in this case, what the ad is. And then finally, of course, your thesis. Okay, this is where, once I approve your thesis in your worksheet, that will go right here. And that's what I do. right? Here's my thesis. There are my 3 talking points. Okay. Through the use of color, playful imagery, and a double meaning tagline that reinforces theme, the Jeep ad appeals to blah, blah, blah. Okay. So those 3 pieces form your introduction. And by the way, if we look at the completed essay, remember I sent this out for people wanting a sneak peek. Here's what a full introduction looks like. And yeah, my introduction's pretty ambitious, so maybe yours won't be this long. But there's my opening, right? My hook. But I go beyond just a single sentence, right? I spend all of this space here. Yeah, up through here. This is kind of my opening, right? This is where I find a nifty way to begin. In this case, it's riffing on the idea of Jeep, reminding people what Jeep brings to mind when you think of Jeep. Okay, and then here's my description of the ad and my thesis. So you're going to aim to do the same thing in your outline this week, but then come essay time next week, same deal. Your introduction will have some sort of opening move. So if you're writing about Call of Duty, I don't know, it could be something as simple as an opening that talks about how successful this series has been. If you want to aim for something more ambitious, that's fine too. But something that's it's a general paragraph. Okay, the introduction is purposely general. We're not diving into analysis. We're just setting up the analysis. And then, and keep in mind, each Roman numeral here represents a separate paragraph. So we've already finished the introduction. So Roman numeral 2, oops, I don't want to change margins. Roman numeral 2 here is your second paragraph, which is your first body paragraph, which means you have to discuss your first thesis point. Okay, so you do discuss the thesis points in order, just like in my dumbed down example, right? My hobbies are running, swimming, hiking. Then in your 3 body paragraphs, you discuss them one at a time: running, swimming, hiking, each in its own paragraph. So this is the paragraph about the ad's use of color. So this section, first it asks for a topic sentence. Topic sentence is just a sentence that establishes the topic, okay? It's sort of like the thesis for the paragraph. So here, the ad is an exercise in simplicity, especially in its use of color. So the reader knows that this paragraph is going to be about color. Then it asks for 1 main point you plan to make about this topic. The outline template kind of uses some fancy wording. Sentence describing a detail from the ad that is part of this rhetorical strategy. Put simply, give me 1 main point you plan to make about, for example, here, the use of color. Then give me a second main point you plan to make about the topic, right? And just a sentence or 2. Because an outline is exactly that, just the main ideas. Getting the main ideas on the page. So you don't write entire paragraphs. You're not writing the essay yet. You're just getting your main ideas on the page. So yeah, topic sentence, 1 main point you plan to make, a second main point you plan to make. And then here's where we get into research, okay? You have to find a quotation, including an APA citation. We're going to talk about APA towards the end of this lecture. But right now you just have to realize that you do have to find research. Okay, so here I found actually not just 1 quote, but 2. 2 nifty quotes about earth tones, okay, and how neutrals and browns are the epitome of nature. Because if you remember that Jeep ad from week 1, it had that kind of beige, sandy background, right? So I found some nifty quotations about earth tones and how they're related to nature, or usually used for backgrounds. So that's relevant. And finally, it asks for just a quick explanation of why the research is relevant. Okay, and really that's about it, because then you repeat. Then you move on to your next body paragraph. So this will be your second thesis point. For the Jeep ad, it's about imagery. Okay, so I write a topic sentence. Makes it clear that this section is about imagery. 1 main point I plan to make about the ad's use of imagery. A second main point I plan to make. A relevant quotation. So here I found a nifty quotation about the animal imagery in the Jeep ad. A quick explanation about why it's important. And then repeat. Okay, it's like rinse and repeat. Here we go, paragraph 4. This will be your 3rd body paragraph and your final thesis point, which in my case was about the ad's tagline, its use of language, topic sentence that makes that clear, one main point I plan to make about this, another main point I plan to make, relevant research, and then finally there's a conclusion section where it asks you to rephrase your thesis statement, just using different language, and a couple sentences where you anticipate how you might close the essay down. Again, you might change. You're not married to it. I'm not asking for perfection at this stage. It's just I want to see some planning so that you're not doing it off the cuff in week 3. And the more effort you put into this, the more specificity you can create, yeah, you'll be in excellent shape. Because based on what I have here in this completed example, like I've got everything. Yeah, I still have to create the content for the paragraphs, but the structure is there. It's like a skeleton. You have the skeleton. Now you just have to hang flesh on it. But when you have all of your main points, your thesis, your topic sentences, 3 solid quotations that you found, it's like plug and play. Next week, you can just fill in the details. Does this make sense, by the way? All this? Does anybody have questions? Is anybody confused? And I apologize if it seems like I'm painfully going through this. It's just that, really, I've been teaching this for more than a year, and at first I got the most disastrous results because people just opened up this file and looked at it as a questionnaire. Like, oh, I just got to answer all this. And so it was just, yeah, it wasn't organized. Because unless you understand that each of these Roman numerals represents a separate paragraph, it's going to get all off track. Jason says he'll have to rewatch. Yeah, please do. And the awesome thing about rewatching is, of course, you can skip around. You can skip the boring stuff at the beginning, or when I make a lame joke, or you can just get to the stuff you need to watch. But yeah, just keep in mind that you're creating your 5 paragraphs, the basics, right? And that you're 1 topic per Roman numeral. Okay. Okay, now we do have to discuss some of the finer points, and I'm going to race through it because, believe it or not, I've kind of covered a lot of the super important stuff. So we're just going to use this presentation to reinforce things, okay? So if I don't linger for a long time in every slide, I apologize. Oh, yeah, welcome to week 2. I should have said that from the beginning. Yeah, we're in week 2. Okay, I'll skip that. Here's another reminder. Remember, we looked at this beautiful picture in week 1 that just reminds us that every week of the course we're devoted to a separate stage. And right now we're here, kind of in these 2 arms. You should begin researching this week. And yes, the outline means that you're organizing your material. Okay, I do want to spend just a tiny bit of time here. Who is the intended audience? Okay, I already said it's a general reader, like the perfect stranger, but I do want to give a piece of advice. So where's my blank document? Do I still have that open? Or did I close it entirely? The one that has my lame, yeah, there's the lame outline. Okay, so when I say that your audience is the general reader or the perfect stranger, I mean that like quite literally. And one of the things that I see, and we all do it, I do it too. The difference is I've been writing for so long, I can spot it and correct it almost immediately. But sometimes we get too trapped in our own heads. We think that the ideas that we have in our minds are automatically understandable to another person, but they're not. So one way to catch this is to quite literally step outside of yourself. Look at your reading, or excuse me, look at your writing from the perspective of someone who is not you. I mean, really, look over something you've written, something substantial, and pretend that you're not you. Pretend that you're just some stranger who's accidentally come across your paper. You know nothing about the paper, the class, the assignment. You're just reading it. It should make sense to you. You should not stumble. You should be able to read it from start to finish without feeling confused. Okay? Because think about it. If you come across someone's discussion, analysis of an advertisement online, you don't need to understand why it was written or whether it was written for a class or the person just decided to write it for fun, right? You could read it. You could read it from start to finish. Same thing with your writing for this class. Now, why do I mention this? Because sometimes I see sentences like this in the outline, in the essay in week 3. For example, an opening sentence that says, in this ad, the guy is nervous on his first day of work. So this is like the opening sentence of an essay. And then I have to be the mean instructor and say, what ad? What guy? What do you talk about work? Does this make sense? Like to the general reader. By the way, does anybody know what the ad this is? Like I know what the ad this is. When I see a student's paper that begins this way, I automatically know what he or she is talking about. Yeah, good, Gordon. It's a McDonald's ad. But does it make sense to you, Gordon and others, Catherine, that who knows what ad this is? And I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because I've seen it so many times. And it's because the person, yeah, she knows she's writing about McDonald's. And she also figures that, well, my instructor, he also knows that I'm writing about McDonald's. But the general reader wouldn't. By the way, this is just kind of like, it's not just politeness or good etiquette. It's a convention of good writing. Good writing makes itself clear. So instead of beginning a paper like this, you might begin in the McDonald's ad first day, Andy, a young or an anxious millennial, is on his, I don't want to repeat first day, but I'll screw it. I'm not going to worry about perfection on his first day of work. Okay. The important thing is, can all of you see the difference? Does it make sense to you why I say that this is general and vague, but the second one isn't? Okay, good. Because I see this a lot, and not just in an opening sentence. I'll see it in the middle of an essay. It's one of the hardest things I have to explain to people. Like, and usually they can get it if they truly step outside of themselves. I know it sounds funny, but if you do it for real, just pretend when you read your own writing that you are not you, you can catch so many things. You'll spot so many sentences that are either confusing or vague or haven't been explained fully. And it's just, again, it's something we all do, where we are so convinced that our ideas are already understandable to others that we don't fully explain ourselves. Okay, so let me get back to this thing here. So yeah, the audience is the general reader. What is an essay? I always think we should ditch this slide. I don't create them, by the way. The department creates them. I mean, yes, an essay can be anything. A video technically can be an essay. But for this class, essay, we mean in the more traditional sense, a short piece of nonfiction writing on a particular subject. And yes, it is fairly short. We don't have a page length requirement, but it should be between 700 and 1,400 words. I think my Jeep essay, which is right around 3 pages exactly, I think it's between 800 and 900 words. And yeah, most people's papers are kind of in that length, sometimes a tiny bit longer, maybe a tiny bit shorter. But I've really never seen someone write like a 5-page ad analysis. It seems like they always seem to be around that 2.5 to 3.5 page length, maybe a touch longer, but um, again, the 5-paragraph structure sort of limits how much you can say. And it is a focused task. Like, I don't have that much to say about the GPAD. So when I write my 5 paragraphs and discuss my 3 points, anyway, my point is it's not terribly long. Okay. It might seem long to you, but I'm telling you, a 2 to 3 page paper is not that long. I'm going to fly through this because this just echoes what I've already talked about. Right. So basic essay structure has an introduction or opening. It has support. These are those body paragraphs. Okay, those 3 body paragraphs, basically the middle stuff. If it's like a sandwich, there's an introduction, which is like one piece of the bread, the body paragraphs or the support, which is like the meat or the veggies, and then the other piece of bread, which is like the conclusion. And this I'm going to fly through too, because this again is stuff that I've repeated as I walked through the outline template. But there's an introduction paragraph, which is a general paragraph, sets up the entire paper. So yeah, the introduction is not your place to immediately start talking about the Call of Duty ad's choice of music or the use of color in the Chico baby bottle ad. Okay, the introduction stays general and it ends with your thesis statements. The body paragraphs, this is where you get into analysis. Okay, this is where you develop your ideas, reach conclusions, provide research, right? And this is super important. 1 idea per paragraph. And that is important because that's one thing I want you to carry out of this class. You're never going to have to write an ad analysis essay, ever. It's not that I don't think it's useful. I had fun writing the G paper. And I think there's value in being able to look at something and critically think about it. So I'm not saying that the assignment is worthless. I'm just saying you'll never have to do that outside of this class. But the writing basics that are taught through this assignment, yeah, I hope you do remember them. I hope that in whatever class you take at Full Sail, you'll always remember, okay, I need some sort of opening. I need some sort of closing. And in between, I need paragraphs that focus on one idea at a time. And then we need a conclusion where we kind of echo the thesis. And here it says set readers down gently, or sometimes I say to find the right satisfying note. Listen, I apologize. I'm going to get away from this. Someone commented in his weekly journal that I jump around a lot. He liked it, but it must drive other people insane. So I apologize. What did I want to open? Oh, the Jeep essay. Right. Okay. So again, here's my introduction, right? So it's got my opening move. It's got my brief overview of the ad. It ends with my thesis. So that sets up the rest of the paper. Here's my paragraph on my first thesis point color. Here's my second paragraph on my second thesis point imagery. Here's my final body paragraph on tagline. And here's my conclusion. Okay, it's pretty short. By the way, here's my kind of rewriting of the thesis. The ad's basic elements, color, imagery, and wording produce maximum results. Okay, so yeah, it's a complete rewording of the thesis. And yeah, here's my example, just finding a few final lines to end the paper on. That the ad successfully communicates brand essentials without ever stating so directly. It taps into the viewer's subconscious and allows the ad's elements to do their work, appealing to consumers' desires to enjoy the rewards that the Jeep brand offers. Ta-da! Okay, so yeah, it's not a long paragraph. And sometimes this is even presented, like when in high schools, when they teach the 5-paragraph essay, it's presented kind of like the introduction is shown as an upside down triangle. So it's broader at the top and it gets narrower at the bottom because you kind of start general and then narrow down to the thesis. And then there are the 3 body paragraphs, usually represented as rectangles. And then the final paragraph is like a right side up triangle. So it begins fairly specific with a repetition of the thesis, and then it broadens into some final comments. Okay, find the right final note to end the essay on. This I'm also going to skip because we talked about this last week, right? I think I had 2 students who even reproduced that little template that I created on the spot in week 1. Remember, with blanks, like the blank ad uses blank, blank, and blank. So yeah, we covered this last week. And I'll be commenting on your thesis statements in your worksheet because that's the most important to me. I'm going to fly through this as well because we already talked about this. When we're talking about individual paragraphs, okay? So you're going to begin with a topic statement. You're going to find in your reading for this week, I think it's for this week, that yes, technically the topic sentence does not have to be the first sentence of the paragraph. I'll ask you to probably do that just because I think it's easier to keep track of. But yeah, it's like the thesis of the paragraph. It lets readers know what the paragraph is about. Excuse me. Then yeah, this is where you explain stuff. This is where you provide evidence and your research. And you end with a link back to your topic. I call this like a cincher line. So I'm not going to go to the Jeep essay because that's too much back and forth. But essentially, I think a lot of you will be following a similar pattern. And remember, you always have examples to study. So this week you have 2 outlines to look at. Next week you'll have 2 essay drafts to look at. In my Jeep essay, every paragraph, body paragraph, sort of does the same thing. Begins with a topic sentence. I first explain or describe the issue because, again, the general reader doesn't know what the Jeep ad's background color looks like. So I explain it. Then I analyze it, or if I slide in research, and then yeah, I end with a cincher line, okay, where I sort of put it all together. This is where I say, for example, that yes, the Jeep ad's use of color reinforces Jeep's outdoorsy image, right? It uses earth tones, earth colors, because Jeep reminds one of nature. So I think you'll be doing a similar thing in your body paragraphs. Topic, describe it, explain it, and with some sort of big picture conclusion. Okay, the rest of the time I want to use talking about research. Because some of you are probably thinking, oh crap, there's research. I hate research. What is research? What does that mean? It's not that big of a deal. You need 3 sources, okay? One has been provided for you. So let me go back to, right? So this is the instructions for the outline assignments. Yeah, again, you have the outline example for Jeep. You have another one here if you click on it. But up here, okay, and it's highlighted, you have this video, Pathos, Ethos, Logos, and Advertising. Okay, so it's a YouTube video. It's only 6 minutes long. And yeah, that could be one of your sources. Please pull something from it that's more interesting than just pathos is the appeal to emotion. That's a basic definition of a word. You could have done that on your own. You didn't really need to watch a video to get that. So yeah, please pull something more interesting from this video. But sure, if you can find something from the video that kind of connects to something you're saying in your essay, grab from it. And then you've got one of your sources. Then you just have to find 2 more, just 2. One should come from the Full Sail Library database, and one can come from online. Okay, you can Google. Be careful, it should be a quality source. By quality, I mean no Wikipedia, no dictionary.com, no IMDb, no biography.com, none of that sort of dictionary-ish, encyclopedia-ish, wiki-ish sort of stuff. You can begin at Wikipedia. For example, actually, I'll use this since I don't need it anymore. Okay, so the Call of Duty ad uses a song called Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones. Let's say you go to the Wikipedia page. So I'm saying, no, do not quote something from here. Not because Wikipedia is always terrible. It's just that Wikipedia, first, it's more like an encyclopedia. It's not really filled with interesting information. Second, sometimes, yes, the quality can differ. Maybe you've even seen examples of Wikipedia pages that seem pretty strongly written, like experts are behind it, writing it, and then others that are just awful. However, if you scroll down to the references, right, look at all these references. Yeah, there might be something interesting here. Jagger remembers from Rolling Stone. Mick Jagger on the apocalyptic Gimme Shelter. Keith Richards recalls making the song. Mick Jagger tells the story behind Gimme Shelter. So yeah, if you can find a quality source here. And what does quality source mean? Rolling Stone is quality. Actually, lots of things are in terms of, okay, so things we recognize like Billboard, Rolling Stone, Time, even general like newspapers, Los Angeles Times. I would even say, sure, CNN, USA Today, basically all those publications we recognize. Not tabloids like the National Enquirer, but yeah, things we kind of know and respect. Websites, I would say trust your judgment. If you're unsure, you can reach out to me. Sometimes, again, websites can be pretty trustworthy, or they can seem like they're filled with good information. Other times they can seem kind of shaky, especially when it comes to like blogs, right? There might be a genius writing that blog, or it might be some 12-year-old kid in his garage. So yeah, we're aiming for 3 quality sources. So online you have options. I'm going to go to the Full Sail Library, because one of your sources should come from here. And I'm at Full Sail Connect, which I assume all of you already know how to get to. And if you look on the left, you just have to scroll down to Library, and then scroll down to Research Databases. Now you have a whole bunch of databases. EBSCOhost is actually a giant umbrella that includes things like Academic Search Complete, Business Source Complete. There's also what used to be called LexisNexis. It's now called Nexus Uni. Nexus Uni tends to search more accessible, kind of down-to-earth publications, lots of newspapers, popular magazines, whereas EBSCOhost tends to search more journals. There's some crossover between the two, but EBSCOhost is a bit more academic. LexisNexis is a bit more accessible and down-to-earth. I'm going to begin with EBSCOhost. But don't forget that you also have Nexus Uni. I just always select all these databases at once. Click Continue. Now be careful. I already know what to type in here to trigger a specific response. It's not going to be that quick for you. Okay. Um, I can give some general tips about trying to find research. First is to play around with keywords. Some of you will have ads and specific topics that might yield great results. Okay. I'm going to keep using the Call of Duty example and its choice of music. Gimme Shelter. Yeah, in that case, because Gimme Shelter is a super famous song and Call of Duty is a pretty well-known gaming franchise, there has been a lot written about those two things. But for other people, like if you're writing about the World Wildlife Fund ad, it's actually a PSA more than an ad, about saving the bluefin tuna, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to type in something like World Wildlife Fund use of color. There's probably nothing written about it. So based on what your ad is and what your specific thesis points are, um, you might have to vary your search terms. Okay. And by the way, sometimes you do not have to look specifically into the ad. Actually, most times you don't. I didn't find anything about the Jeep ad's use of color, but I looked into color theory in general. Or if you're writing about an ad's use of layout, again, you might find a nifty quotation about layout that's relevant. Okay, so rarely, I think, are you actually going to be typing in the words like McDonald's or Call of Duty. Um, Second, and I don't, this might be a little bit difficult to explain, but I call it reverse engineering. And by reverse engineering, I mean this. With the Jeep ad, I knew what I wanted to say. Like I looked at the ad, I knew what 3 points I wanted to discuss, and I already had pretty clear ideas in my head what I wanted to say. And so it's a little bit flawed because not all students will be there. But if you kind of are in that situation where you already know what you want to say, that actually makes research kind of easy, or not easy, but in other words, I had to go out and just find the quotations that I wanted. In other words, I knew I wanted to find a quotation about earth tones and their connection to nature, or earthy colors and their connection to nature, right? Like I didn't have to do difficult searches and then read and learn and discover and find a quote. It's like, no, I knew what I wanted to say, or rather, I knew what I wanted the quotation to say. I just had to go and find it. So that's why I call it reverse engineering, because you sort of already know what you want to find in a quotation. You just have to find it. And so you do searches online or through the database here to sort of trigger those results. I don't know if that makes sense, but I could talk about it more one-on-one if you like. But yeah. So anyway, oh, I should also mention, I'll start doing the search while I talk. Call of Duty. That GPS essay I wrote, it has 6 sources, by the way. You only need 3. Mine has 6. It took me hours to find those 6 sources. Okay. So, yeah, you're not going to find a relevant quotation or source in 5 seconds or 5 minutes like I'm doing here. It might take you half an hour or more. Might take you an hour to find your first source, and then an hour to find your second source. So yeah, I already know what to trigger. So I've typed in Call of Duty, Gimme Shelter. It only comes up with 3 results. And yeah, we're going to look at this first one. Gimme Sales by Ann Donahue in Billboard Magazine. So I'm going to click on the HTML file. And it's a pretty short, very short article. And at first glance, it doesn't seem very relevant. It's got some factoids about how much the opening day of video game sales are, but that's not really relevant. Okay. And remember, I said in week 1 that, okay, this ad uses a famous song. It could have used any famous song. It could have used any famous classic rock song. Why this song? Why the Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter? This article doesn't answer that at all, so probably more research needs to be done. But I could argue that maybe there's something of secondary relevance here, like this thing here. According to Activision Vice President of Music Affairs Tim Riley, scoring, he means obtaining, Gimme Shelter for the ad was no small feat. And then explains that he had to fly to New York to get permission to use to speak to the rights holders so he could use the song. He actually showed an edit of the video to the band members, the Rolling Stones themselves, to get their approval. That's a lot of effort. Like, they wanted this song. They didn't want just any song. If they just wanted an upbeat, energetic song, They could have picked from thousands of songs. So why did he want this song so badly? Again, the article does not answer that, so I'd still have to do some research. But I might also include a quick reference to this because it's definitely proof that, yeah, they wanted this song. Catherine asks, is it a better idea to go with details that come up with lots of search options, or is it okay to pick from a small list like you've done, like you found on Call of Duty? I'm not sure if you're referring to the number of results. I mean, yeah, I mean, you have to be careful. There is a way to limit. If I go back, right. So if you get like 1,000 results, one thing you can do is click on full text because, yeah, it's difficult to explain, but you have to click on full text. In this case, they're all full text, but you can also limit the date. In this case, it's only 1 year because all these articles fall in that 1 year. But if you get results from 1970 to the present day, you can limit it to within 5 years. And if you still have like 300 results, that's probably a hint that you need to better define your keywords. Or you could quickly scan through a lot of them will have titles that are way off topic, like here. Asymmetric creative insight, controversial Call of Duty video game ad scores high with young men, offends women. That might be a fascinating article, but that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the ad's use of music. Same thing with maybe this one. Okay. All I can say is, even though it's frustrating, I can just tell you in general that it takes time, but your goal is to find relevant support quotations that are going to, lend support for what you're saying. Where was I? Oh, let me go back to this. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left. So let me talk about APA. And I've got sort of a offer or bargain to make you. I am going to talk about APA for a little bit. But here's the thing. I want you for the outline to try your best with APA. Because if we look at the outline template, you can see that the body paragraphs ask for a sentence incorporating research quotes. Include APA citation. There's also a section at the end for references. So yes, you need to find 3 quotations, one for each of your 3 body paragraphs. And then you need to create references at the end. Here's the thing though. Next week for the week 3 lecture, it's going to be entirely devoted to APA. I'm going to do walkthroughs of APA. I will open up a blank Microsoft Word documents and essentially, here it is. I'm going to teach you how to make the essay look like this. Everything from the cover page to the header to the paragraphs themselves, to spacing. I will create in-text citations in real time and references as well. Okay, so here's my references page. Okay, as you can see, 6 references. But because I'm covering that next week, what I want you to do for the outline is give it your best college try, pardon the pun. So I'm going to talk a little bit about APA and I'm going to point you to some resources, but mostly what I want you to see you do is copy examples. And my promise to you is, if you're giving it a good try, like I can clearly see that you're trying to follow APA correctly, but maybe some of the particulars are off. Not a big deal, okay? Because again, next week we'll get into the very specific stuff. But where I will take off points is if people just make things up, okay? So the references are just completely invented. The citations are completely invented. But right now you're probably thinking, well, but here, let me close this. You might be thinking, but I don't know how to create citations. I don't know how to create references. You have examples. First of all, we have this awesome website that was created by a fellow Full Sail English instructor. I'm going to copy and paste the web address into the chat. For those of you watching this lecture, it's projectapa.info. And for example, in-text citations. So that's, again, in the text of the paper. Here, let me close this as well. So here's the completed outline. So, for example, here's a quotation, right? It's only a couple words, but still, it's quoted because it's not my language. An in-text citation means that immediately as a quotation appears, you have to have parentheses and then information, okay? Author's last name, year, page or paragraph number. This is because sometimes online there are no page numbers, so you literally count the paragraphs. So if the quotation appears in paragraph 4, you just use the abbreviation para, okay, lowercase, period, 4. But if there's a traditional page number, you just put the page number. Same thing here. Here's another quotation. Immediately after, in parentheses, last name, author's last name, comma, year, comma, page or paragraph number. So here's an example where I used a paragraph number because there were no page numbers. Here's another quotation. Okay, this one's a bit longer. And it does ask for you to incorporate research. Okay, so you kind of lead into the quote somehow. But here's the quotation, and then the parentheses, author's last name, year, page or paragraph number. I think there's one more example here. This one I won't talk about actually because it's a paraphrase, which is but here's the thing. Okay, so here's projectapa.info. So you can look at the outline example because you have that Jeep outline, and just to imitate, just copy. Okay, next week we'll get into more specifics. But let's say you don't like that method. Then go to projectapa.info, go to in-text citations. The very first guy here formats a quotation and summary. Now this is a bit confusing. This is why I want to hold all this off until next week. This is why I just say for now, just copy, just imitate the models. Because there are actually two ways you can handle quotation. You can, if you want, mention the author's name in your actual sentence, like according to Newman, or according to John Newman, or according to John Newman of Time Magazine. But if you do mention the author's name in your sentence, then things get broken up. You immediately have to put the year in parentheses after the author's name, and then at the end of the quotation, then you put your page or paragraph number. Or you just find your own natural way to lead into the quotation and save everything until after. But because this is sort of like choose your own adventure, based on do you mention the author in your sentence or do you not, just choose one, okay? Like I said, my promise to you is as long as I see that you're trying to follow APA format, I won't make a big deal about taking off points. If I see completely invented information, however, that doesn't look anything like APA, then yeah, I'll take off points. Because next week we'll go into all this stuff with great detail. Same thing with references. My advice is, because you have this example, the Jeep outline, is scroll down to the references and do the same thing. Okay, if you find an article, or whether it's a traditional article or a website, author's last name, comma, first initial, the date, the title of the article or the source, the name of the publication, italicized, the words retrieved from, and then the URL. Okay, same thing here. So do all of you feel confident that you could do this? That at the very least you can look at the references page in the Jeep example because you have it and just do what's happening here? Okay, because if you can do that, I promise that I won't be super stingy and take off like tons of points. By the way, if you do have an exception, like let's say, but I didn't find, or I found a great article, but it has no author. Okay, then you just eliminate the author's name. You move the title to the beginning instead and still follow the rest. Okay, so here the article title, date, name of the publication, italicized, retrieve from. I'm going to put it back in its original format. Right? If you have very different exceptions, like I don't cover how to cite books because students almost never cite books or films or things like that. If you do, you have two options. You can either Google, how to cite a book in APA, or you can reach out to me and I'll help. But 95% of what students use are articles, either from the Full Sail Library database or from online. Okay, so my advice is, copy. And projectapa.info also has. Okay, so you have in-text citations here. You also have references. So, and this also covers everything. So if you're not sure how to cite a newspaper, here you go. Or a blog, or a website, or social media, or electronic sources, or audiovisual. Okay, so you have these tools. And I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm just trying to say I don't think it makes any sense to race through APA because I don't Listen, I love my fellow instructors, but sometimes, yes, they take off lots of points for APA on the outline, and I don't think that's fair. Because if we're not going to devote that much time to it in week 2, I can't really take off points. But again, if you don't try at all, then I'll take off points. And next week, I know it's not the sexiest lecture. Many of you will probably, we got 12 of us here today. Next week, there'll probably be like 2 people. Because, yeah, it's APA, completely devoted to APA. So it won't be thrilling stuff, but I can guarantee it might be the most important. You will be an APA expert after next week. Okay? Because, yeah, I'm going to open up a blank Microsoft Word document and literally walk you through every step. Layout, citations, references, all in real time. Okay, so this is really what I have to cover. So we're at the hour mark. So if you have questions, comments, now is the time to ask. If you are comfortable with what we've gone over, you don't have to stick around. I thank you so much for attending. I will see you next week at 7 p.m. But yeah, I'm going to hang out a bit and see if people have comments or questions. You're welcome, Gordon. You're welcome, everyone. I'll see you next week. I was joking. Probably most of the people will show up next week. APA is, yeah, it might not be exciting, but it's incredibly useful. We do have like our own video on the site that covers some of what I'm going to do, but a lot of students don't watch it. And yeah, I get into more stuff. I think the video only covers layout, but I also get into citations and references. Oh, Catherine, you posted a question above. Yeah, Jason, I'm going to be grading the worksheets tomorrow. And I don't know if you were with us from the very beginning, but I said if I do have to go past midnight, I'll just extend the due date of the next assignment till Monday. Catherine says, what about speeches or spoken poetry that have been done at inaugurations? Ooh, that's a good question. Someone just sent me a private message about the due date. Remember I sent out an apology? Because, yeah, I screwed up. Last month we changed the due date for the first assignment to Tuesday because of Labor Day, and I just didn't change it back. We copy sort of the dates from month to month. So I basically told people, yeah, if you get it done by Sunday, great. If you get it done by tonight, I'm not going to make a big deal. So some people got some extensions. Catherine, I honestly don't know. And I apologize, but either you can Google or I can Google. I'm not trying to avoid your question. It's just that I seem to remember. See, I don't even want to say. I'm tempted to say you don't even have to cite it. Oh, it's confusing. Yeah, I'm sorry, Catherine. It's just I'm not going to pretend that I know an answer if I don't. But yeah, that's definitely an exception. I just can't remember if it requires a citation of any kind or if it doesn't. Yeah, the answer's out there somewhere. Jason says, what's the best way to speak with me if I need help this week? The best way is to begin by just sending me a message through the FSO platform. Some people send me emails, and I feel terrible because I don't check emails often as I should because so many students send me a message through the FSO platform. I'm generally in the office starting at 2 p.m. I know my office hours say 1 p.m., but I've been staying up so late that sometimes I don't drag my rear end into the office until 2 p.m. Eastern. But I stay late. Like tonight, it's already 8 p.m. So yeah, after 2 p.m., it's pretty safe if you want to try to call in. But sometimes, yeah, reaching out to me with a message and setting up a time where we can either chat on the phone or I can set up a one-on-one go-to session like we're doing now. Other people just want to bounce questions back and forth in text form. But yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be grading worksheets, and I just have a feeling with so many students in an extra class I'm teaching that I might need to go past midnight. So some people might be receiving it on Thursday morning. And probably some people might have specific questions once they get the feedback. Yeah, Jason, I mean, Saturday is a possibility, but that's something that would be nice to be set up in advance. I can certainly make myself available on the weekend for, you know, some sort of chat or discussion. That's not a problem. But obviously, because those are typically off days, um, if they're not set up in advance, I may not even see a request for something like that if it comes in on Friday night or Saturday itself. Catherine says, you'll rewatch, but for a skeleton outline this week, do we need to find our quotations? Yeah, because the skeleton, I mean, the outline is the skeleton, and each body paragraph section asks for a quotation. So, yeah, if you just look at the template itself, you will be putting in 3 quotes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording because I think questions are slowing down. So I'm stopping the recording now.